Josh wiped the sweat from his forehead as he leaned over the humming control panel. The space dock was noisy, filled with the sounds of alien engineers, buzzing tools and translator drones. He'd been fixing the same broken freighter engine for hours now, and his back was starting to ache. Still, he enjoyed this kind of work, quiet, focused, and far away from Earth's chaos. Next to him, silent as always, stood the alien assistant. Lyra. She was tall and slender, her silver skin glowing faintly under the artificial lights. But what stood out the most were her tentacles, long, smooth, and shimmering like polished crystal. They moved with grace, responding to her emotions even when she said nothing. Josh didn't know much about her kind, only that they came from a watery planet and rarely spoke. Lyra had worked beside him for a few weeks now, helping pass tools, running diagnostics. And watching quietly, he had grown used to her presence, even liked it today. Something was different. Her tentacles looked especially bright, swaying in patterns Josh hadn't seen before. Trying to lighten the mood, he gave her a small smile and said, "Your tentacles look great today." The moment the words left his mouth, the entire repair bay froze. Even the buzzing of tools stopped, like someone had pulled the power. The alien crew turned to stare, their eyes wide and mouths slightly open. Lyra's body trembled, and her skin changed color from silver to a glowing purple. Her tentacles flared out like a blooming flower, then curled inward, almost shyly. Josh blinked, confused. Did I say something wrong?" Lyra's eyes were wide, and for the first time she spoke directly to him. Her voice was soft and almost musical. "Are you choosing me?" Josh's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Wait, what?" he finally stammered. "I was just giving you a compliment, but it was too late." Lyra stepped closer, her tentacles gently brushing his arm. She lowered her head in a respectful bow and whispered, "I accept." The other aliens started murmuring in their own languages. A tall, four-armed technician stepped forward, shaking his head. "Human, do you not understand what you have done?" he said with concern. Josh took a step back. "No, I seriously don't. What's happening?" The technician looked at Lyra, who now stood behind Josh like a protector. In her culture, complimenting a female's tentacles is not small talk, he explained slowly. It is a courtship offer, an emotional and biological signal. Declaration of intent to bond? Josh stared, horrified. "I was just being friendly," but Lyra was already forming her aura, a soft glow that enveloped them both. Her species used bioluminescence to signal trust, affection, and sometimes possession. "Can we undo this?" Josh asked, heart racing. "No," the technician said flatly. "The process has begun. She has accepted. Her body will begin to change." Josh turned to Lyra. "Look, this is a big misunderstanding." She didn't speak, but her tentacles wrapped protectively around his wrist. The room filled with gasps, and one alien even fainted. "Please let go," Josh said, trying to pull away gently. Lyra blinked slowly, confused, but loosened her grip. "Just a little. I don't want to hurt you," she said softly. "But if I lose you now, I will fall into silence." Josh didn't know what that meant, but her words sounded heartbreaking. The technician explained. "When a bond is started and then broken suddenly, it causes mental damage to her kind. They lose emotional control, sometimes permanently." Great, Josh thought. All this from one stupid compliment. He sat down on a nearby crate, holding his head. What was he supposed to do now? Lyra sat beside him silently, tentacles calm and curled close to her body. Her glow dimmed, and she seemed to wait for him to speak again. He sighed. "What now?" "Now," said the technician, "you must see the elders. They will decide how to handle this, and what path is safe for both of you." Josh stood up slowly. Looking at Lyra, she looked up at him with quiet hope in her eyes. He didn't know if this was fate, mistake, or madness. But one thing was clear. Nothing in his life would be normal again. He had told an alien girl her tentacles looked great, and the galaxy was about to change because of it. The hallway was quiet. Far from the busy repair bay, Josh walked quickly, his mind spinning, behind him. Lyra followed without a sound, her glowing skin dimming and flaring with every step. It felt like a dream or maybe a trap. All he did was say a compliment. And now he was being taken to meet alien elders. He glanced over his shoulder. "You okay back there?" Lyra nodded but didn't speak. Her tentacles stayed curled tightly against her back, like she was hiding them. That alone made Josh feel worse. A guard opened a large metal door. They entered a round chamber filled with alien beings, old. Ones with long robes, odd symbols on their heads, and skin faded with age. This was the Elder Ring of Thalvoon, the ruling circle of Lyra's species. They sat in silence, watching Josh like he was a dangerous animal. One of them finally spoke, a deep female voice. "You spoke the sacred words to our daughter. Do you deny this?" Josh raised his hands nervously. "I didn't mean them like that. I didn't know it meant anything serious, yet she glows for you," the elder said. All eyes turned to Lyra, who was standing near the edge of the room, her body glowing. Again, her skin now pulsed in soft waves of violet and blue. It was beautiful and terrifying. "What does it mean when she glows like that?" Josh whispered to the nearest guard. The guard answered flatly, "It means her heart has chosen." Josh swallowed hard. The elder continued, "Once a glow begins, a bond has started, if broken. The damage is eternal." Josh looked at Lyra. Again, unsure what to say. He didn't love her. He barely knew her. But she looked at him like he was the center of her world. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," Josh said, his voice low. "Then you must understand what your words have caused." The elder replied, "Our daughters are not toys for your humor." Suddenly Lyra stepped forward, her voice shaking but firm. "I approached him first," she said. Gasps echoed through the room. "That is not the custom," another elder whispered. Lyra stood tall. "I felt the bond before his words, his kindness. It reached into me." Josh blinked in surprise. "Wait, you wanted this?" She nodded slowly. "I hoped he would see me, truly." "See me?" And he did. Josh didn't know what to say. He never imagined anyone, especially an alien, would feel something for him like that. An elder stood, taller than the rest, his robes brushing the floor. "If her feelings are true, and your words were pure, then we must move to the trial." Josh frowned. "Trial? You have one cycle, 7 Earth days," the elder said during that time. "You will live together, train together, and face trials of mind and spirit. At the end, you will choose, bond or break." Lyra looked at Josh, hope and fear flickering in her eyes. He hesitated, then gave a small nod. "I'll do it," he said quietly. "If it helps her, I'll try." The elders murmured among themselves and then gave a single nod. The decision was made later that evening. Josh sat in a small guest room within the alien embassy ship. The walls glowed faintly. Everything smelled like ocean breeze and metal. Lyra entered quietly, carrying a bowl of glowing fruit. She placed it on the table and sat across from him. "Are you angry with me?" she asked in a soft voice. Josh shook his head. "No, just confused. I didn't mean to make your life harder," she said, her tentacles twitching nervously. Smiled a little. "Well, you definitely made it more interesting." Lyra's glow brightened slightly, like a smile in color. He took a piece of the fruit and bit into it. It tasted like citrus and honey. "Not bad. Why me?" I asked after a moment. "There are so many others, stronger, smarter, even from your world." She looked at him gently. "Because you saw me. And you didn't look away." Josh didn't know what to say to that outside the room. The alien ship hummed like a living creature preparing for something bigger. He leaned back and sighed. 7 days with a glowing, beautiful alien girl who thought he was special. What could possibly go wrong? The ship entered silence mode. All lights dimmed, walls pulsed with low hums, and voices faded across the corridors. Josh stood at the center of a glowing circular chamber. Barefoot, surrounded by soft blue mist, Lyra stood a few steps away, her body wrapped in ceremonial cloth, her tentacles coiled tightly. "This is called the ritual of silence," she whispered. Josh turned slowly. "What's it for?" "To test if two hearts can hear each other." Without sound, she replied, her voice barely above a breath, before he could ask more. The doors sealed shut behind him. Soft music, not heard, but felt, began vibrating through the floor. It was like standing inside a heartbeat. A light flared between them. Lyra took a step forward, eyes glowing softly. Josh stood still, unsure of what to do. Then she moved her tentacles. Slowly, like a dance, not random but deliberate, like sign language without hands. The meaning came not in words, but in emotion. Josh suddenly felt warmth in his chest. A wave of comfort, then a flash of sorrow, like the memory of being left alone. He gasped, "Is that you?" Lyra didn't answer. She just moved again, and another pulse came. Joy this time, then fear, then quiet longing. Josh placed his hand over his heart and nodded. "I feel you," he whispered. Then it was his turn, but he had no tentacles. No glow, no secret language, so he stepped forward, slow and honest, and reached out his hand, open, palm up.
Ow.
Lyra looked at it like it was the most sacred gesture she'd ever seen. Then, gently, she touched his fingers with the tips of her tentacles. A spark passed between them, not physical, but emotional. The room pulsed brighter, reacting to their connection. Lyra closed her eyes and leaned forward, her forehead barely touching his. Josh closed his too, letting the silence speak between them. When the ritual ended, the room lights faded back to normal. Josh opened his eyes to find Lyra watching him, her tentacles completely relaxed. "You passed," she whispered. "You heard me." Josh smiled slightly. "And you felt me too." They walked together through the ship's garden corridor. Strange glowing trees lined the sides, releasing calming scents into the air. Josh was quiet, still absorbing everything he had just experienced. "So, is this normal bonding stuff for you?" he asked. "Trying to keep it light?" Lyra chuckled. A rare sound from her. No one has ever done it with a human. He raised an eyebrow. "So I'm the first?" "You're the only," she corrected softly, suddenly. A soft alarm rang through the corridor. Lyra's tentacles shot up in alert. A drone zipped past them and stopped in front of Josh, projecting a hologram. It was a serious-looking alien with dark eyes and a scar across his head. "Human," the message began. "You have drawn the attention of the House of Valzar." Josh glanced at Lyra, who looked shocked. "They claim the right to test your intentions. Through ancient law," the message continued, "you are summoned at dawn." The hologram vanished, leaving a heavy silence behind. Josh sighed. "What now?" Lyra whispered. "The House of Valzar is dangerous. Let me guess. They don't like glowing tentacle girls falling for humans." He said dryly. "They believe bonding must be earned through challenge," she said, voice tight. "What kind of challenge?" "Trial by instinct." That night, Josh couldn't sleep. He sat in the garden alone, watching stars blink outside the ship's dome. Lyra joined him quietly and sat close. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "For dragging you into this." Josh shook his head. "You didn't drag me. I stepped into it, foot first." "I was alone before," she said, "even among my own kind." Josh looked at her. "Why?" "Because I didn't want the path they chose for me. I didn't want a mate picked by politics." "So you waited, I hoped," she corrected, "and then you spoke." Josh chuckled. "Yeah, I opened my big mouth." She smiled. "And everything changed." He leaned back, watching her. "I don't know what this trial is, but I'll face it." "Why?" she asked. "Because I want to," he said. "Because maybe I want to keep seeing you glow." Her tentacles gently wrapped around his hand. No words followed, just a shared silence, deeper than any ritual could teach. The sky above the alien training ground was deep red. Clouds moved slowly, and the sun pulsed like a breathing flame behind distant mountains. Josh stood barefoot on the stone floor, surrounded by a circle of armored warriors. Each of them wore silver masks and held glowing staffs, none friendly, none blinking. Across the ring, Lyra watched silently, her tentacles tightly coiled. She wasn't allowed to speak or interfere, part of the old law. She could only watch. If Josh failed, their bond would be denied forever. If he gave up, she'd be forced into silence, a punishment for choosing wrongly. A voice boomed through the air. "Human, you have entered the trial of instinct." Josh nodded once, heart pounding. "Survive without harming Understand without words, protect without fear, the voice continued. The trial begins now. A gate opened behind him, from the dark. Corridor emerged, a creature tall, lean, covered in black feathers. Its eyes glowed red, its claws scraped the floor. Wasn't here to kill him, it was here to test him. Josh didn't move. He remembered what Lyra had said the night before. This trial doesn't test muscle, it tests heart. The creature growled and stepped closer, circling him slowly. Josh took a slow breath and lowered himself into a relaxed stance. No fists, no threats, just openness. The creature lunged, not to strike, but to startle. Josh didn't flinch. Instead, he dropped to one knee and bowed his head slightly, a gesture of peace. The warriors around the ring murmured. Confused, the creature stopped, sniffed the air, then growled louder. It charged again. Claws flashing, Josh raised his arms not to strike, but to shield. He took the hit, rolled back, and landed hard. Pain shot through his ribs. But he stayed down, no anger. He whispered to himself, just instinct. The creature circled. Again, unsure now. Josh stood slowly, arms open. I'm not your enemy, he said softly, knowing the beast couldn't understand words. But maybe you can feel truth this time. The creature moved slowly. It stepped closer, and then suddenly lunged. Josh didn't run, he stepped forward and hugged it. Gasps filled the air. The warrior stood, confused and tense. The creature stopped mid-lunge, frozen in his arms, and then it purred, softly, deeply, like thunder underwater. It leaned into him. Claws soft, body trembling. Josh exhaled. He'd passed. From the stands, Lyra's glow burst into bright waves of color, pride, joy, and love. The voice returned louder. Now, the human has completed the trial. By instinct, he is bonded. The gates opened again. Lyra ran to him, her cloth falling away, revealing her full glow. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She knelt before him and placed her forehead on his chest. Josh placed his hand gently on her head, together. They stood in the middle of the circle, one glowing with alien light, the other with silent courage. Later, inside the sacred chamber, Lyra and Josh sat close. Sharing warm fruit and silent thoughts, she looked at him gently. You didn't fight, she said. I didn't need to, he replied. The creature just wanted to be understood, Lyra. Touched his chest softly, and you were willing to be hurt for it. Josh smiled. You were watching, huh? She nodded. Every moment, a low chime echoed through the chamber. A message glowed across the room. Bond permission granted. Josh looked at it, then at Lyra. So, she laughed for the first time, truly laughed, and leaned into him. No, she whispered. It means you're ready for what comes next. He blinked. What comes next? Lyra's glow shifted deep and royal. My family, she said, and they are not like me. Josh groaned. Of course not. Can't have peace without more chaos. Lyra smiled softly, but this time we faced them together outside. The stars shifted. The galaxy didn't know it yet.
Our boss.
But something ancient and sacred had just awakened, not through war or power, but through instinct, trust, and a compliment about tentacles. The starship docked on a floating palace above the clouds of Tavari Prime. Josh stood at the edge of the landing ramp. Staring at the city made of crystal bridges and glowing towers, it looked like heaven. But the cold silence from the guards made it feel like anything but welcoming. Lyra stood beside him, dressed in royal robes, made of flowing silver thread. Her tentacles were polished and glowing faintly with emotion. But her expression stayed unreadable. These are my people, she said softly. They sent me away long ago when I rejected my arranged pairing. Josh looked at her, surprised. You never told me that. I was waiting, she said, to see if I could trust someone to know. Their ship door hissed open behind them. Two tall aliens wearing ceremonial armor approached and bowed to Lyra. Princess Lyravoth of House Zan, one said formally, the circle of judgment awaits. Josh muttered, this doesn't sound like tea and cookies. Lyra gave him a brief smile. You'll be fine if you don't speak unless spoken to. They were led through shimmering halls, past statues of past rulers with glowing eyes and long flowing tentacles. Josh noticed something strange. Every statue showed a female with a male standing beside her, but each male looked miserable, he whispered to Lyra. Why do they all look like they regret their lives? She didn't answer, just tightened her grip on his hand, inside the council hall. 10 nobles sat in a half circle, each wearing a different crown made of star metal. At the center sat matriarch Voshtel, Lyra's mother. Her tentacles were longer than any Josh had ever seen, coiled like a throne around her body. Her voice echoed across the chamber. You returned, daughter, with a human at your side. Lyra stood tall. He passed the trial. He is my chosen. The nobles murmured in disbelief. Ridiculous, one hissed. Humans are wild animals. Unfit for bond, another growled. Josh cleared his throat. Standing right here, folks. The matriarch's eyes narrowed. You have courage, human, she said coldly. But courage does not mean value. She turned to Lyra. You will be given the chance to prove his worth, but you will pay the price. What price? Josh asked carefully. The matriarch replied, if he fails, you are stripped of your title, your name, and your glow. Lyra's body flinched. Josh stepped forward. No, punish me if you must, not her. You already accepted this path. The matriarch said, now the test begins. Guards opened a side door, and from it stepped an alien male, tall, armored, and full of rage. This is Velthor, said the matriarch. The one you were meant to bond with, the warrior of the stars. Lyra looked away, her glow fading slightly. Velthor pointed at Josh. He stole what was mine, Josh. Blinked. I said her tentacles look nice. That's all. Velthor roared. Then speak again, on the arena floor. The arena was a circle of light above open sky. A single mistake meant falling forever into clouds that swallowed ships. Whole. Josh stood with a simple shield and no weapon. Velthor held 2 energy whips, his armor pulsing with combat energy. Lyra stood with the nobles. Her glow dull now, a sign of inner pain. She wasn't allowed to help, not even allowed to speak. This battle was for Josh to win, or for her to lose everything. Velthor struck first, fast, savage, and full of fury. Josh dodged. Barely avoiding the searing lashes, he used his shield not to strike, but to absorb, to redirect. You remember the trial by instinct. It wasn't about power. It was about meaning. Why are you angry? Josh called out between attacks. You think you deserve her just because you were chosen for her? Velthor growled. I trained for years. I bled. I was promised. Josh ducked and rolled. Then why didn't she choose you? That stopped Velthor cold. Josh stepped forward, breathing hard. She chose me because I saw her, because I listened, because I treated her like she mattered. You treated her like a prize. Velthor's whip slowed. You're right, he said quietly then. He tossed his weapons aside and knelt. Gasps exploded from the nobles. The matriarch stood slowly, her face unreadable. The bond is confirmed, she said, and for the first time in years. Lyra's glow blazed like a star reborn. Asterisk that night. The palace halls were silent. The challenge was over. The judgment passed. And yet Josh couldn't sleep. He sat on the balcony, watching clouds roll across the glowing skies of Tavari Prime. The stars above shimmered like liquid glass. He heard soft footsteps behind him. Lyra stepped out into the open air, no longer in formal robes. She wore a simple white gown. Glowing faintly from her skin underneath, her tentacles moved slowly in the breeze, calm and free. You're not glowing like earlier, Josh said, watching her carefully. This glow, she whispered, is different. She sat beside him, looking down at her hands. I've hidden part of myself from you, she admitted, not out of fear. But because I didn't know if you'd still stay, Josh, raised an eyebrow Lyra. I've been almost eaten, judged by nobles, and whipped by a space gladiator. If I'm still here after all that, think you can trust me, she smiled. But it didn't reach her eyes. There's a sacred chamber under the palace, she said. A place where we show who we really are to those who deserve it. Josh tilted his head. You mean your real form? She nodded. Our true Form is a reflection of our bond, of what we feel. And what we want? He stood up and held out his hand. Then let's go, he said gently. I want to see the real you. The chamber was deep underground. It was alive. Glowing walls pulsed with a heartbeat rhythm, and the air was thick. With energy, Lyra led him into the center, where a pool of crystal-clear water reflected no ceiling, only stars. She turned to him, trembling slightly. Do not speak while I change, she whispered. Just feel. Josh nodded and stepped back, keeping his eyes on her, not with lust, but with trust. Lyra stepped into the water slowly. Her glow began to rise, spreading outward from her chest to her limbs. To her tentacles, her body shimmered. Then shifted, not painfully, but gracefully. Her skin turned iridescent. Pulsing with every color in the spectrum, her tentacles grew longer. Wrapping around her like a gown of living silk, her eyes expanded deep and golden, glowing with warmth. Small wings unfolded from her back, not for flying, but purely ceremonial. When she turned back to him, Josh felt his breath catch in his throat. She was no longer the quiet assistant beside a mechanic. She looked like the queen of the stars, soft, radiant, powerful. But her gaze, it was still Lyra. She stepped forward, her tentacles floating like feathers in the air. Do you still see me? She asked softly. Josh didn't answer with words. He walked to her, placed both hands on her glowing cheeks, and said, I've never seen anything more beautiful, the chamber responded. Light burst from the walls, and the pool below them reflected both forms, human and alien, bonded in shimmering unity. Lyra's tentacles wrapped gently around his waist, not to hold, but to connect. They didn't kiss, they didn't speak. They simply stood there, feeling everything. I was told no one would ever accept this form, Lyra whispered. Josh laughed softly. Then someone told you a terrible lie. Her glow deepened, now connected to his heartbeat, and in that moment, the bond was complete, not just culturally, not just emotionally, but spiritually across species. When they returned to the palace surface, the sky had changed, the colors danced like waves, and the towers hummed softly. Even the guards stepped aside in silence, bowing as they passed. Matriarch Vashtel stood at the gate, her long tentacles flowing like banners. She looked at her daughter's new form, then at Josh. You completed the awakening, she said, almost with disbelief. Lyra nodded. I did not think a human would survive it. The matriarch admitted. Josh smirked. Honestly, neither did I. She studied him closely, then stepped aside. The palace is now your home, she declared. The bond is law. Josh looked at Lyra, his voice soft. I saw your true self, he said. Now it's time for you to see mine, she smiled. You already show it every time you choose to stay, and together. They walked back into the palace, not as guest and guide, but as two hearts, wildly different in body, completely alike in soul. A new day rose over the cloud oceans of Tavari Prime. But it wasn't just the sky that had changed. The palace shimmered with a brighter light. For the first time in generations, the House of San had approved a full bond between a human and royal blood. Josh stood on the edge of a glass balcony, overlooking the galaxy through a shifting energy field behind him. The palace was busy, servants moving quickly, diplomats arriving from different planets. They weren't coming for war or politics today. They were coming for a wedding. He tugged nervously at the ceremonial collar on his new robe. It glowed with soft threads that shimmered when he breathed, made from the silk of Lyra's ancestral wing cloth. Even now, he could hardly believe it. Do I look like royalty or just confused? He asked out loud. Lyra stepped behind him with a soft laugh. You look like someone who followed his heart into madness, made it look graceful. She was glowing again. Not just physically, but from deep within. Her ceremonial form was radiant, elegant, but it was her smile that made his chest ache. Are you sure about this? He asked, voice lower now. She stepped closer, her tentacles gently resting against his back. I've never been more sure, she whispered. You saw me. Even when I was hiding from myself, He turned, taking her hands in his. I didn't plan for any of this, Lyra. I was just fixing engines. I was just handing you tools, she replied softly. They laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt right. The wedding was held inside the celestial spire, a chamber that floated between sky and space. Representatives from over 30 species filled the floating seats. 1,000 glowing drones recorded every moment to stream across star systems. Josh stood at the center ring, feeling the weight of eyes, of history. But when Lyra entered, glowing like a living star, he saw nothing else. The ceremony began. Not with vows, but with memory exchange. A ritual where both beings shared one pure memory. Using light and feeling, Lyra went first. She shared the moment Josh had spoken to her, not the words, but how she felt, the warmth, the shock, the light inside her that had been cold for years. Then Josh shared his, a memory of earth, rain, hitting a rooftop. Him sitting alone in a mechanic shop. He remembered looking at the stars and feeling like he was meant for something more. And when Lyra appeared in his life, thought something finally made sense. The crowd fell silent as the lights merged. Two memories, human and alien, woven into a single ribbon of energy. Then came the final step. The soul declaration. They didn't need to speak, but Josh still did. I came to this place by accident, but loving you. That was no accident. Lyra's eyes shimmered. I was born under a law I never believed in, but you made me believe in choice. Their hands touched the ceremonial crystal at the center. The bond was sealed, and the spire exploded in light, visible from space across the stars. Beings of all kinds watched the moment and felt something change. Weeks later, on a peaceful human-colonized moon, Josh stood outside their small new home. The palace had gifted them freedom, a quiet life, far from war and politics. Lyra sat in the garden nearby, her tentacles curled gently around a glowing flower. Josh walked over, handing her a small device. What's this? She asked. It plays music. Earth music, he said proudly. She clicked it, and a soft melody played, something old, something human. She tilted her head, letting the rhythm wash over her. It's beautiful, she whispered. So are you, Josh replied. Still, she smiled. You keep saying that, and I always will, he said. Even when your tentacles look messy, her laugh echoed through the garden like wind through wind chimes. As they sat together, the stars blinked above them. No longer cold or far, they had become something else. A witness to a mechanic and a princess. To an accident that turned into a legend, to a bond that changed the stars, all because a human once said, Your tentacles look great today.